Hey, how are you? Matt Heisler from Vanderbilt Properties here. And on this edition of Inside Real Estate, I'm going to do a sort of a counterpoint to a recent New York Times article. Basically, I thought it was full of a lot of stuff that was not very helpful. And one of the purposes of this particular channel is to sort of unmuddy the waters about what happens in real estate. And it's usually very, very different from what people think is happening. And I would have thought that a reporter for the New York Times who specifically specialized in the real estate space would have written a more educational article instead of ultimately an article that I think is full of misrepresentations, to say the very least. There were two things that manifested themselves in a couple of different ways, but the first one is just that all the agents across the country, or at least at the state level, are engaged in collusion in order to keep commissions high. And that there's this giant conspiracy going on where we're all talking and sharing information and working to keep commissions, which are obviously completely unreasonable, at a place where they don't make any sense because the settlement should have fixed everything, and it doesn't seem to be. So the second thing that I wanted to address was that agents are actively coming up with systems in order to go around the settlement. And I'm going to go into both of these things a little bit, but I mean, just to pick up that second one, I mean, if you listen to the podcast, what she points out is that there were agents that she said that she talked to, and their solution to the settlement. I don't want to wander down into the settlement too much, but one of the key elements of the settlement was that most agents are not allowed to post buyer agent compensation in any national NAR based MLSs. And that's most of them. And so for years and years and years, we used to put the buyer agent compensation in there as part of the settlement. NAR agreed that they would not allow anyone to do that anymore. And so there became this problem theoretically for agents, which was, how do I communicate to the masses what my seller might be paying out in compensation? So the seller giving compensation to a buyer agent was not prohibited as part of the settlement. That is still fine to do, but we're no longer allowed to communicate it through many of the MLSs that are out there. So the article made a big deal of what I will call the three cookie story. We should all take pictures of the kitchen, and if there are three cookies on a plate in an island, then it means 3%. Okay. And so, I mean, I think this story was told to her in jest, or she picked it up off of some sort of social media, Facebook post by people who were kidding around. The reality is that even even if someone meant this seriously, it's impossible to execute because three cookies in a picture is not a contract. Real estate doesn't happen in the shadows, and commissions don't get paid because people don't expect them. Like we don't sneak up to the closing table and take money. That's not how this works. Listing agents get contracts signed that explain how much we're going to get paid at the closing table as commission. That's how this works. And now buyers also have to sign buyer agency agreements, buyer agency contracts that state very specifically what the buyer agent is going to get paid. We have contracts that say what people are going to get paid. And if you posted commission for a buyer agent in MLS underneath your listing, well, everyone had agreed contracts with MLS that guarantee that those payments were going to happen. That is how the system was built. There's nothing magical about that. Hi, pardon the interruption. This is Matt Heisler from Vanderbilt Properties. And if you're liking this video and you feel like you're getting some good information out of it, what I'd like to do is create other videos that you can also get good information out of. So please remember to like and subscribe this video. And if you are in the market or you're thinking about buying and selling a house in my area, which includes Massachusetts and Rhode Island, don't forget to watch this video all the way to the end so that you can take advantage of the special offer I am offering, folks. So, but we didn't just show up and say you owe me 3% or 2.5% or 2% or whatever the number might be. That's not how it worked at all. So this idea that we're going to start showing up at the table and say, well, you put three cookies in the picture, so pay me, it's total nonsense. If you don't have a contract for your commission, you're not going to get paid. That's how this business works. This is a paperwork business. from how the contracts work. And if it's not in the contract, then you're simply not going to get paid. That's how that works. So the idea that we're going to come up with some sort of special communication system in order to communicate um, these buyer agent compensations, it's total nonsense because it's unenforceable. Whatever system we came up with, it would be unenforceable to do that. So it's not going to happen. Okay. Instead, it's going to revert to the contracts themselves, as it should. There's nothing wrong with that. The sellers should know what they're paying the listing agent. The buyer should know what they're paying the buyer agent. That's where we're all going with this. We're not there yet, but that's where we're all going. So the second part that I wanted to address was that she suggested that NAR, the National Association of Realtors, is helping us all collude by giving us very specific instructions about what we can do and what we cannot do. And they are in many ways. From the settlement, they're telling us expressly what not to do um, for certain things. But ultimately, the settlement that was agreed to is very narrow in scope, and it doesn't fundamentally change a lot of the ways that we can do things. And I think because the attorneys who agreed to the settlement said, we're going to change the way everything is done. We were changing the way real estate is done in this country. They made a lot of promises that, frankly, they can't keep. I mean, even a casual read of the settlement for an industry insider can see that there are plenty of ways for the industry to continue on the way that it has. Now, to their credit, certain states have, and certain state level realtor associations have made pretty big changes to their docs. And I think that they've been more progressive. But as far as I know, there haven't been any states that have changed their laws. And it's really important to understand that the settlement, while important legally, it doesn't change any of the laws on the books. Okay. What it does is it says if you do certain things, even if they're legal, you could get sued because they're not those things are not consumer friendly. So, but that's very different than saying that they're illegal. It says that you could be vulnerable to a lawsuit, but that doesn't make them illegal. And since the laws haven't changed, a lot of the things that we're doing haven't changed.